Good evening, everyone, and warm welcome to this session ABG Complex Mystery Unplugged. I am Dr. Mohan Gayan from Diamond Harbour Government Medical College and Hospital. For many of us, interpreting an ABG can feel like cracking a tough puzzle, but today we will simplify it step by step and uncover the meaning behind those numbers. We all know the ABCs of ABG, but beyond these numbers lies the secret of how our body maintains balance. A story of how the lungs, kidneys, and blood constantly communicate to keep us alive and in balance. My goal today is simple: to make ABG interpretation clear, logical, and clinically useful. Something you can apply confidently at the bedside. So let's begin this journey from confusion to clarity, from numbers to physiology, and from mystery to mastery. Before we begin, let's talk about the terminology. Clear language builds clear understanding. A patient is acidemic or alkalemic. This describes the actual pH of their blood. However, a patient can have multiple underlying acid-base processes like metabolic acidosis and respiratory alkalosis occurring simultaneously. The crucial distinction is this: the pH is the final result, while the disorders are the processes. Understanding this difference is the foundation of all acid-base interpretation. An ABG is far more than a laboratory value. It is a real-time map of a patient's internal physiological state. It helps us evaluate three cardinal aspects of life. Oxygenation. Is oxygen being delivered effectively? Then ventilation. Is carbon dioxide, the volatile acid, being efficiently eliminated or not? The last one is acid-base balance. Is the pH environment compatible with normal cellular function? In critical situations, this single test can pinpoint the cause of instability within minutes. Our task is not just to read it, but to interpret the story of survival it reveals. An accurate ABG starts with the right sample. The radial artery is preferred. It's superficial, easy to access, and has dual blood supply confirmed by the Allen's test. In shock or poor perfusion, the brachial or femoral artery may be used, though with higher risk. Always choose a site that balances accuracy and safety. In the hustle of clinical practice, we often face a dilemma. Is an ABG always necessary, or will a VBG suffice? Here's the point. There is a strong correlation between arterial and venous values for pH and PCO2. This means for assessing acid-base status and ventilation, VBG is often a good, less invasive estimate. However, venous PO2 is completely unreliable for estimating oxygenation. So the golden rule is use VBG for acid base and ventilation trends. Use ABG when oxygenation status is critical. Let's be even more practical. Choose an ABG when managing acute respiratory distress, hypoxemia, or patients on a ventilator, whenever precise knowledge of oxygen level is crucial. A VBG is suitable for monitoring acid-base trends in stable patients or for a rapid initial assessment in the emergency department. In short, the ABG is your diagnostic scalpel. The VBG is your valuable screening tool. Use your clinical judgment to choose wisely. When you hold an ABG report, you are holding a wealth of physiological data. You have directly measured values pH, PCO2 and PO2, the pillars of our analysis. You have calculated values like bicarbonate and base excess. The ABG analyzer also allows entry of patient's parameters such as temperature and FiO2. But the true essence is this: these numbers are not random. They represent how the lungs and kidneys communicate to maintain the perfect acid-base harmony upon which all life-sustaining reactions depend. Every value tells a story if we know how to listen. The accuracy of your ABG begins long before the needle touches the skin. Preparation is essential. Ensure your patient is calm and resting. Anxiety can cause hyperventilation, artificially lowering PCO2 and skewing the results. Review and document their oxygen therapy status meticulously. Take a moment to explain the procedure. Your reassurance can prevent a sudden movement that ruins the sample. Finally, always check for contraindications like infection at the site or an abnormal Allen's test. The Allen's test is a simple essential bedside procedure, a classic example of clinical wisdom. We occlude both the radial and ulnar arteries while the patient clenches their fist, causing the palm to turn pale. Then we release pressure on the ulnar artery. If the palm flushes pink within 5 to 10 seconds, collateral flow is adequate and it is safe to proceed. If not, we must choose another site. This simple test can prevent ischemic injury. It is the bedrock of safe practice. Before interpreting an ABG, we must first ensure the sample itself is reliable. Small technical errors can turn accuracy into artifact. Excess heparin dilutes the sample, lowering PCO2 and bicarbonate. Air bubbles raise PO2 and lower PCO2, so remove them immediately. Delay in analysis causes false acidosis. Process within 15 minutes. Respect the sample and it reveals the truth. If you ignore it, it may deceive you. Cleanse the site thoroughly with an antiseptic. Use a pre-heparinized syringe to prevent clotting. Insert the needle at a 30 to 45 degree angle directed toward the pulse. You will feel a characteristic flush of blood when you are in. Let the syringe self-fill. Do not pull the plunger. Withdraw smoothly and apply firm direct pressure for at least 5 minutes. Longer if the patient is on anticoagulants. Immediately cap the syringe and gently mix the sample. Let's quickly ensure our setup is complete. You will need a pre-heparinized syringe, sterile gloves and antiseptic solution, gauze pads and adhesive tape, a container with ice if transport is delayed, a properly labeled sample sticker with patient details and FiO2. Once the sample is drawn, the discipline continues. Label the syringe immediately. Never rely on memory. Expel any visible air bubbles. Gently roll the syringe to mix the heparin. Transport it to the lab immediately or place it on ice. Finally, recheck the puncture site to ensure hemostasis and patient comfort. A reliable ABG result comes from careful technique. The tools may be simple, but precision makes all the differences. While ABG sampling is generally safe, complications can occur. So, bleeding, hematoma, infection or arterial spasm also can occur. We must avoid sites with infection, vascular grafts or poor collateral circulation, like when the Allen's test is abnormal. Now the technical errors in ABG. Technical pitfalls are common and can be deceptive. Air contamination can falsely raise PO2 level, creating an illusion of good oxygenation, and delayed analysis can lead to false acidosis. Venous sample can be mistaken for arterial, especially in shock, misleading your entire diagnosis. Therefore, never interpret an ABG in isolation. Always correlate it with the patient's clinical picture, their color, saturations, and vital signs. This is the hallmark of sound, safe medicine. Small errors can change ABG results. Knowing common pitfalls helps keep your readings accurate. Ideally, the sample should be analyzed within 15 minutes. Remember, glass syringes preserve blood gases better than plastic ones. Remember, if an ABG value does not match the patient in front of you, trust your eyes before you trust the analyzer. Machines provide numbers, but clinicians interpret life. Now see the complications and contraindications. I have previously mentioned this. Among the complications, bleeding or hematoma formation, local injection, thrombus in artery, local pain. Among the contraindications, coagulopathy or bleeding disorder, atherosclerosis of the artery, infection at the puncture site, or abnormal Allen's test, or use of thrombolytic therapy. These are the contraindications of ABG sample drawing. Now that we know how to get a proper sample, let's look at its components. Measured values like PaS, PCO2, PO2 are the foundation, and the calculated values like bicarbonate come from them. The analyzer provides numbers, but the clinician provides context. That's where ABG science meets the art of medicine. To recognize the abnormal, we must first know the normal. Normal PaS range is between 7.35 to 7.45, the narrow window of life. PaCO2 level is 35 to 45 millimeter of mercury, the respiratory component, and bicarbonate level is 22 to 26 millimole per liter, the metabolic component, and PaO2 level is 80 to 100 millimeter of mercury, and SaO2 level is 95 to 100%. Gas exchange is the cornerstone of oxygenation and critical to ABG interpretation. We evaluate it using PO2 versus SpO2 level. Pulse oximetry gives an estimate of saturation. Alveolar arterial gradient, the difference between alveolar and arterial oxygen, helps distinguish simple hypoventilation from lung disease. And another one is PaO2 FiO2 ratio, indicates severity of hypoxemia, especially in ARDS. On room air, PaO2 should be around 100 millimeter of mercury. If it's much lower, consider lung pathology. PO2 is not a fixed number. It depends on key variables as like age. PO2 declines with age. See the table at the right side of the slide. FiO2, the inspired oxygen concentration, and the atmospheric pressure, lower at high altitude. The alveolar gas equation elegantly ties these together. For example, on room air, the alveolar O2 or PaO2 is about 100 millimeter of mercury. If SpO2 is more than 95%, it generally means PO2 is more than 80 millimeter of mercury. This is good. SpO2 around 90% aligns with PO2 around 60 millimeter of mercury. This is a critical threshold. SpO2 less than 90% means PaO2 is falling off a cliff, a red flag sign. Always treat an SpO2 below 90% as a sign of significant compromise. Physiology is speaking to you in real time. Let's clear up a common confusion. Hypoxemia and hypoxia, these are not synonyms. Hypoxemia is low oxygen in the blood, that is low PaO2, and hypoxia is low oxygen at the tissue level. A patient can have hypoxemia causing hypoxia, but in anemia or heart failure, tissues can be hypoxic even with a normal PaO2. So don't just stop at the PaO2. Think about oxygen delivery. Survival depends on what finally reaches the cells. The alveolar arterial oxygen gradient is one of our most informative tools. It measures the efficiency of oxygen transfer from the alveoli to the blood. A normal value is about 5 to 25 millimeter of mercury, increasing with age. High gradient problem within the lung, example in pneumonia or pulmonary embolism. Normal gradient indicates problem outside the lung, example in hypoventilation from a brain injury. When an ABG shows a gas exchange problem, ask, is this ventilatory failure or oxygenation failure? Ventilatory failure means high PaCO2, that is more than 45 millimeter of mercury. That means or indicates the pump is failing. Oxygen failure means low PaO2 or PaO2 level is less than 60 millimeter of mercury with normal or low PaCO2. The lung parenchyma is failing in this case. This distinction is crucial. It tells us whether the patient primarily needs ventilatory support, oxygen therapy or both. SaO2 and SpO2 are often used interchangeably, but they are not the same. SaO2 is measured directly from arterial blood. It's the gold standard. SpO2 is estimated by pulse oximetry, convenient but prone to error. Remember, in carbon monoxide poisoning, SpO2 can be dangerously false normal. Trust pulse oximetry for trends, but trust the ABG's SaO2 for the truth. Let's take a step back. The journey of oxygen from the air we breathe to the mitochondria in our cells is a beautiful physiological cascade. It drops step by step from the atmosphere to the alveoli into the arterial blood, then through the capillaries and finally reaches to the tissues. We all know this pathway. And see the ARDS severity, Berlin criteria also, and definition of ARDS, that is acute onset or less than or equal to 1 week, bilateral infiltrates on imaging, respiratory failure not due to heart failure or volume overload, or PaO2 FiO2 ratio less than 300 millimeter of mercury. Each step is a potential point of failure. Understanding this cascade helps us pinpoint exactly where the delivery chain is broken. It's like tracing oxygen's path and finding the bottleneck. Now let's turn to the heart of the topic, that is pH. pH is a logarithmic scale that measures the hydrogen ion concentration in our blood. Because it's logarithmic, a small change in pH represents a massive shift in acidity. The normal range is 7.35 to 7.45 is a narrow window of life. Move beyond it and enzyme stops working, the heart weakens and consciousness fades. When we read a pH, we are seeing how carefully the body keeps its balance every second. Every day our body produces a lot of acid, yet the pH stays steady. How? Because of a finely tuned teamwork within the body. Our lungs excrete about 15,000 millimole of volatile acid or carbon dioxide daily. Our kidneys excrete 50 to 100 millimole of fixed acids, that is usually generated from protein metabolism. The lungs respond in minutes. The kidneys take hours to days. Together they sustain the fragile equilibrium. We call this acid-base homeostasis. Why does pH matter so much? Because life depends on chemistry and chemistry depends on pH. When pH shifts, enzymes stop working, the heart loses rhythm and the brain begins to fail. A tiny pH change of 0.1 can double or half vital reactions. Keeping pH stable is essential for survival. Now see the key equation. pH equal to 6.1 plus log bicarbonate concentration or base by acid or 0.03 into PaCO2. This formula captures the entire acid-base story. It links blood pH with bicarbonate and carbon dioxide levels. The numerator bicarbonate is managed by the kidneys and the denominator PaCO2 is managed by the lungs. It's a perfect partnership. If this ratio is disturbed, pH changes. Our job is to figure out which partner is struggling and why. The body has immediate defenders, buffer systems. The bicarbonate system is the key player in blood. Intracellularly, proteins and phosphates take over. CO2 is not just a waste gas, it's a respiratory acid. Hold your breath, CO2 rises, pH falls, respiratory acidosis. Hyperventilate, CO2 falls, pH rises, that is respiratory alkalosis. PCO2 is the respiratory phase of acid-base balance. When balance is lost, we see four fundamental patterns. First one is metabolic acidosis. In this case, pH decreases and bicarbonate also decreases. The second one is metabolic alkalosis. In this case, pH rises and bicarbonate also rises. In respiratory acidosis, pH falls due to increase of PaCO2. And in respiratory alkalosis, pH increases due to decrease of PaCO2 level. For each primary disorder, the other system compensates. But remember a golden rule, compensation never overcorrects. If it seems to, think of a mixed disorder. At first, we have to know the normal values, then the abnormal values. So, abnormal values can seem chaotic, but they follow a logical story. If pH is low and PaCO2 is high, that is respiratory acidosis. If pH is low and bicarbonate is also low, that is metabolic acidosis. The trick is to connect the direction of change. This alignment or opposition guides you to the primary disorder. The chaos dissolves into clarity. When a primary disorder strikes, the body does not sit idle, it compensates. Respiratory disorders is compensated by the kidneys, that is called metabolic, and metabolic disorders is compensated by the lungs, that is respiratory. The goal is not to normalize pH but to make it less abnormal. If the compensation seems perfect, suspect a mixed picture. Before you analyze, validate first. Is this ABG internally consistent, or should we accept this ABG? So use this simple rule of thumb. Hydrogen ion concentration is equal to 24 into PaCO2 by bicarbonate concentration. If the numbers do not make sense, the sample might be wrong. Never base a diagnosis on faulty data. In this example, you can see pH is 7.2. So hydrogen ion is 80 minus 20. The 20 is after the decimal point. So 80 minus 20 equal to 60 nanomole per liter. So in this method, we can easily calculate the hydrogen ion concentration. In step on, check pH level. Step on is straightforward. Look at the pH. pH less than 7.35, this indicates acidemia, and pH more than 7.45 indicates alkalemia. But a normal pH does not mean all is well. It can mask a mixed disorder where two opposing processes balance each other out. The rope appears still, but there is tension underneath. In the step 2, evaluate the PaCO2. If pH and PaCO2 move in opposite directions, the primary problem is respiratory, and if pH and bicarbonate move in the same direction, the primary problem is metabolic. This simple step identifies the primary process in most cases. You can use the mnemonic ROME or ROM. That means respiratory opposite and metabolic equal. So in the metabolic component, we will compare with the pH and bicarbonate, and in the respiratory component, we will compare the pH with the PaCO2 level. Assess the compensation. Now ask, is the body compensating appropriately? Physiological compensation always moves the pH toward the normal, but never beyond it. If compensation is absent or inadequate, a secondary disorder is present. In critical care, this step differentiates a simple problem from a life-threatening mixed one. Now see the compensation mechanisms. Let's summarize the compensation patterns. Respiratory acidosis. In this case, kidneys retain bicarbonate. In respiratory alkalosis, kidneys excrete bicarbonate. And in metabolic acidosis, lungs blow off CO2 because CO2 is volatile acid. And in metabolic alkalosis, lungs hold on to CO2. In metabolic acid alkalosis, hyperventilation occurs. The lungs are fast responding in minutes, the kidneys are slow and steady, taking hours to days. It's a physiological duet. Now look at the different approaches to acid-base interpretation. Boston approach and Copenhagen approach. We will discuss the Boston approach for acid-base interpretation. First, we will discuss the respiratory disorders and the compensation rules. For respiratory disorders, compensation depends on timing. For respiratory acidosis, in acute case, bicarbonate increases by 1 millimole per liter per 10 millimeter of mercury increase in PaCO2 level, and in chronic case, bicarbonate increase by 4 millimole per liter per 10 millimeter of mercury increase of PaCO2 level. So you can remember it as on 4 for acute and 4 for chronic case, chronic respiratory acidosis. For respiratory alkalosis, in acute case, bicarbonate decreases by 2 millimole per liter per 10 millimeter of mercury drops of PaCO2 level, and in chronic case, bicarbonate drops by 5 millimole per liter per 10 millimeter of mercury decrease of PaCO2 level. So you can remember the whole processes, that is respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis, by 1, 4 to 5. This tells you if you are dealing with a sudden event or a chronic adaptation. Now answer this question. A patient presents with a PaCO2 of 60 millimeter of mercury. Assuming a primary respiratory acidosis, what would be the expected bicarbonate level if the condition is acute or chronic? So you know that in respiratory acidosis, the formula is 1,4. So in acute case, what will occur? Per 10 millimeter of mercury, carbon dioxide level increase will lead to increase of bicarbonate by 1 millimole per liter, and for chronic case it is 4. See the answer in the next slide. So using these following compensation rules, in acute case, bicarbonate increases by 1 millimole per liter for every 10 millimeter of mercury rise in PaCO2 level. So expected bicarbonate would be 24 plus 1 into 2. Why 2? Because carbon dioxide has increased 40 to 60. So 60 minus 40 equal to 20, and per 10 means 20 by 10 equal to 2. So 24 plus 1 into 2, so 26 millimole per liter. And in chronic case, bicarbonate increases by 4 millimole per liter for every 10 millimeter of mercury rise in PaCO2. So 60 minus 40 by 10 into 4 plus 24, that is 32 millimole per liter. See another example. A patient presents with a PaCO2 of 30 millimeter of mercury, assuming primary respiratory alkalosis. Remember, this is respiratory alkalosis. What would be the expected bicarbonate level if the condition is acute and chronic? So you know the formula for respiratory alkalosis, 2,5. That means bicarbonate will drop by 2 in acute case per 10 millimeter of mercury drop of CO2. So here baseline PaCO2 is 40, so 40 minus 30 equal to 10. So 10 by 10 equal to 1. So for 1 point in acute case, it 1 into 2, so 2 will be decreased from baseline. See the answers. In acute case, bicarbonate decreases by 2 millimole per liter for every 10 millimeter of mercury fall in PaCO2. So expected bicarbonate would be 24 minus 2 into 1, that is 22. And in chronic case, this is 2,5. So 5 is the this formula is for the chronic case. So 24 minus 5 into 1 equal to 19. In acute respiratory acidosis, pH change rule. So how pH changes? See the formulas. Delta pH or pH difference is equal to 0.008 into PaCO2 minus 40 in acute case, acute respiratory acidosis. So in acidosis, pH will fall. So how much it will fall? In acute case, 0.008 into PaCO2 minus 40. So larger pH change per CO2 unit. And in chronic case, this is 0.003 into PaCO2 minus 40. Because 40 is the baseline PaCO2 we take. So in chronic case, smaller pH change per CO2 unit. See this case based question. pH equal to 7.31 and PCO2 is 60 millimeter of mercury, bicarbonate is 31. So is it chronic or acute? And see also the second question, pH is 7.08. So what is the primary disorder in the first one? pH is 7.31, so it is acidosis. So now we will define whether it is metabolic or respiratory. So in respiratory acidosis, PCO2 will increase from the baseline and bicarbonate will normal or less. So here this is the respiratory acidosis in the first case, and also in the second case this is also respiratory acidosis. So whether it is acute or chronic, how to define it or how to calculate? See the answers. PaCO2 or delta PaCO2 is 60 minus 40 equal to 20. So expected delta pH equal to 0.008 in acute case into pH carbon dioxide difference is 20. So 0.16, and expected pH in acute case, pH will drop by 7.4 is the average pH we take for calculation. So 7.4 minus 0.16, that is 7.24. And in chronic case the formula is 0.003 into the delta PaCO2 level. So 0.003 into 20 equal to 0.06. So pH will be 7.4 minus 0.06, that is 7.34. Actual pH given here is 7.31. So it is closer to the chronic value, that is bicarbonate elevated. So first one is chronic, and similarly the second one is acute respiratory acidosis. So the calculation and the formula are same for the second one. Now see the delta ACE and delta PaCO2 ratio. Delta is by delta PaCO2 equal to measured ACE plus or hydrogen ion concentration minus baseline hydrogen ion, and delta PaCO2 means measured PaCO2 minus baseline PaCO2, and we take the baseline hydrogen ion concentration 40 at the pH is 7.4. we know that 80 minus the 2 decimal point or 2 digits after the decimal, that is 40. So 80 minus 40 equal to 40 nanomole per liter hydrogen ion concentration, and baseline PaCO2 is 40 millimeter of mercury. So take an example, pH is 7.1. so hydrogen ion concentration will be, for the 7.1 we subtract the 2 digits after the decimal point, that is here 10. So 90 we will subtract from 90 for the pH 7.1. so 90 minus 10 equal to 80 nanomole per liter, and PaCO2 is 80 millimeter of mercury given here. So calculation, delta hydrogen ion concentration, but delta A is equal to 80 here, it is given. So 80 minus 40 is the baseline. So delta H plus equal to 40 and delta PaCO2 equal to 80 minus 40. So here given 80 and the baseline is 40. So 40 by 40 ratio is 1, that is more than 0.8. See the table below. If more than 0.8 the ratio, it will be acute respiratory acidosis. If it is less than 0.3, it will be chronic respiratory acidosis, and if the ratio is between 0.3 to 0.8, it will be acute on chronic acidosis. So memorize the formula, delta H by delta PaCO2 or delta H delta PaCO2 ratio. Now determine the type of respiratory acidosis. So apply the same formula. pH is here 7.34. So hydrogen ion concentration will be 80 minus 32, because 32 is the 2 digit after the decimal point. So for the we know that for the range of pH 7.2 to 7.5, we subtract the 2 digit from the number 80. So 80 minus 32 equal to 48 nanomole per liter, and PaCO2 here given is 70. So delta pH will be 80. So what will be the delta pH? Hydrogen what will be the delta H? Here H is the 48 and baseline is 40. So 48 minus 40 equal to 8, and PaCO2 is 70 and baseline is 40. So 70 minus 40, that is 30. So see the calculation and the ratio. So delta is equal to 48 minus 40 equal to 8, and delta PaCO2 is 70 minus 40 equal to 30. So the ratio is 0.27, that is less than 0.3, that is chronic respiratory acidosis. And the second one is same, delta A is equal to 60 minus 40. So see the question again. 7.22 pH, so hydrogen ion concentration will be 80 minus 22, that is around 60 or 58, so we have taken it around 60. So the pH hydrogen ion concentration difference or delta H will be 60 minus 40, that is 20, and delta PaCO2 will be 80 minus 40, that is 40. So 20 by 40, that is 0.5, that is between 0.3 to 0.8. So it is acute on chronic respiratory acidosis. Now see the metabolic disorders compensation. Metabolic disorders formula for expected PCO2. For metabolic acidosis, we know the Winter's formula. This is the well-known formula for everyone. So PCO2 equal to 1.5 into bicarbonate plus 8 plus minus 2. This is the formula for metabolic acidosis. PCO2 calculation will be done from this, and for metabolic alkalosis, PCO2 will be 0.7 into bicarbonate concentration plus 21 plus minus 2. So remember these formulas. In the thumb rule, in metabolic acidosis, CO2 should be equal to the last two digits of the pH. For example, pH, if pH is 7.25, last two digits after the decimal is 25. So expected PaCO2 is around 25 millimeter of mercury. So we can tell compensation is appropriate. Remember, this last two digit thumb rule is a quick bedside approximation of Winter's formula, useful in simple metabolic acidosis, but it is misleading in mixed or chronic acid base disorders. Respiratory compensation in primary metabolic acidosis is quick but never sufficient. Why? Respiratory compensation is quick but never sufficient because the lungs can only excrete volatile acid, not the fixed acids that is generated from the protein metabolism, which is responsible for metabolic acidosis. Additionally, PaCO2 cannot fall below physiological limit, that is 10 to 50 millimeter of mercury, without inducing hypoxia, making complete pH correction impossible without renal involvement. Now see the stepwise diagnostic approach. First of all, obtain ABG plus electrolyte simultaneously. Compare ABG bicarbonate with chemistry panel bicarbonate. Calculate anion gap. Correct anion gap for albumin. Identify primary disturbance. Estimate expected compensation. Then perform delta anion gap versus delta bicarbonate analysis. And lastly, compare changes in sodium and chloride. What is anion gap? We are well known with this terminology. The anion gap represents the difference between measured cations and measured anions in serum, plasma or blood. So anion gap equal to sodium minus chloride minus bicarbonate. The normal value is 6 to 12 millimole per liter, average 10. In some cases, potassium is included, so the value of normal range will also be changed. Now see the core concepts of anion gap. In our body, total cations would be equal to total anions. So expanded formula tells sodium plus unmeasured cations equal to chloride plus bicarbonate plus unmeasured anions. So anion gap will be unmeasured anions minus unmeasured cations. So the final formula is sodium minus chloride minus bicarbonate level. Types of anion gap. High anion gap, which is seen in decay, lactic acidosis or toxins, poisonings, etc., or in uremia. Normal anion gap seen in diarrhea or RTA or renal tubular acidosis. And anion gap is decreased in hypoalbuminemia, that is falsely decreased, and paraproteinemia. Now see the mnemonics of high anion gap metabolic acidosis. The mnemonic is mud piles. We all know this. Then see the causes of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. The mnemonic is Clever PD. We also know this well-known mnemonic. Now see the what are the causes of decreased anion gap. If increased unmeasured cations like calcium, magnesium, potassium, lithium intoxication, or decreased albumin in liver disease, nephrotic syndrome, or in malnutrition, cationic immunoglobulins like in multiple myeloma, pseudo hyponatremia in hyperlipidemia or hyperviscosity. This is one of the most important slides. Anion gap correction for albumin. For each decrease 1 gram per dl albumin below 4.5, add 2.5 millimole per liter to anion gap. In some books, the normal level is given as 4. So the value will be changed accordingly. So for example, albumin, if it is given as 2.5 gram per dl, so the difference from the normal value is 2. That is 4.5 minus 2.5 equal to 2. And measured anion gap, if it is given as 15, so corrected anion gap will be 15 plus 2 into 2.5 equal to 15 plus 5 equal to 20. Approach to patients with normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. Let's discuss these slides. What are the causes of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis? GI loss, that is in diarrhea, fistula, ureterosigmoidostomy, and in renal causes like proximal RTA or type 2 RTA, distal RTA or type 1 or type 4 RTA. Or in drugs, acetazolamide, amphotericin or ACE inhibitor ARB or NSAIDs. So how would we diagnose this? We have to calculate the urinary anion gap, that is equal to sodium plus potassium minus chloride. If negative value is obtained from urinary anion gap, this is due to extrarenal cause or due to diarrhea. Or if the urinary anion gap is positive, this may be due to renal causes. Now see the steps. First of all, calculate the urinary anion gap. The formula is urinary sodium plus urinary potassium minus urinary chloride. So why bicarbonate is not included? Normally urine bicarbonate is negligible in acidotic states. Kidney reabsorbs nearly all. Bicarbonate in urine is significant only in renal tubular acidosis type 2 or alkalosis, not in typical acidosis. Hence, it's excluded. It does not reflect acid excretion under usual acidotic conditions. Then interpret the urinary anion gap. If positive value is obtained, suggest renal failure, renal tubular acidosis, etc. If the urinary anion gap is negative, suggest the GI losses, that is due to diarrhea or proximal RTA, etc. Now classify RTA based on urinary pH. In type 1 or distal RTA, pH is more than 5.5. In proximal and type 4 RTA, pH is less than 5.5. Now answer the question. A 68-year-old woman presents with confusion. Her arterial blood gas shows pH 7.26, PCO2 31, bicarbonate 16, chloride 109. Urinary electrolytes are given as sodium 40, potassium 25 and chloride 80. So which of the following is the most likely diagnosis? So we have to calculate the urinary anion gap. So identify the primary disorders. pH is less than 7.35, that is acidemia. Bicarbonate is also less, so it is due to metabolic causes, so metabolic acidosis. And PCO2 is decreased, so partial respiratory compensation occurred here. Metabolic acidosis partially compensated. And then calculate the anion gap. Sodium minus chloride minus bicarbonate equal to 15. So normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. Then in normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, we have to calculate the urinary anion gap. So urine sodium plus urine potassium minus urine chloride, so it is minus 15. So the urinary anion gap is negative. In negative urinary anion gap, it indicates increased urinary ammonium excretion, hence intact renal acidification, so excludes RTA. So it is most likely due to GI losses. So final diagnosis is diarrhea induced normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. See the normal renal response to metabolic acidosis. Detection of acidosis, the first step, then ammonium production, then ammonium excretion in urine, and effect on urinary electrolyte composition, then resulting urinary anion gap. In negative urinary anion gap, appropriate renal response, so normal renal acidification. And the clinical implication is a negative urinary anion gap is in metabolic acidosis indicates extrarenal bicarbonate loss, that is in diarrhea, and a positive or zero urinary anion gap indicates impaired renal acid excretion, that is due to RTA or renal tubular acidosis. Now see the delta ratio analysis. In simple terms, the delta ratio reflects the correlation between the increase in anion gap and the decrease in bicarbonate. So the delta ratio is equal to anion gap minus 12 by 24 minus bicarbonate, because the average anion gap we take here is 12 and the average bicarbonate level is taken here as 24. So delta ratio is equal to anion gap minus 12 by 24 minus bicarbonate. So from the delta ratio, what can we tell? If the delta ratio is less than 1, this is likely a mixed disorder or high anion gap metabolic acidosis as well as normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. If the ratio is 1 to 2, this is pure high anion gap metabolic acidosis. If it is more than 2, this is due to high anion gap metabolic acidosis and metabolic alkalosis. So memorize this table. Recognizing mixed disorders. Suspect if PaCO2 and bicarbonate move in opposite directions. Values outside expected compensation. Tools is acid-base nomogram. Formulas preferred. Example in DKA or in pneumonia, metabolic acidosis and respiratory acidosis. can occur. Clinical examples of mixed disorders in decay and respiratory infection, metabolic acidosis, respiratory acidosis or alkalosis can occur. In COPD and metabolic acidosis, severe acidemia can occur. In vomiting and ketoacidosis, metabolic alkalosis plus metabolic acidosis can occur. In case of drug overdose, in sedatives, respiratory acidosis can occur, and in salicylates poisoning, respiratory alkalosis plus metabolic acidosis can occur. Triple disorders is possible. In the next slide, we will see the triple disorders. All acid-base disorders may coexist except respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis. Remember this point. Respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis never coexist. See the examples of triple acid-base disorders. So, how to recognize the mixed acid-base disorders? The clues are normal pH with abnormal PaCO2 and bicarbonate. First one. Or if the anion gap is more than 30 or the delta ratio is not equal to 1 or inappropriate compensation. So, from these clues, we can identify or recognize the mixed acid-base disorders. Now see the normal pH acid-base disorders. If in the first case PCO2 normal, pH is normal, bicarbonate is also normal and anion gap is normal, so no acid-base disorder. But in the second case PCO2 is normal, bicarbonate normal, but anion gap is high and pH is normal. So this is high anion gap, metabolic acidosis and metabolic alkalosis. See the next two also. Now see some questions and try to answer it. Interpret the acid-base status of a blood sample obtained from a patient experiencing acute hyperventilation. The following arterial blood gas values are recorded. Arterial pH 7.55, partial pressure of carbon dioxide or PCO2 is 20, plasma bicarbonate is 20 milliequivalent per liter. So which of the following best describes the acid-base disturbance? So pH is higher, that is more than 7.45, so it is alkalosis. And what will be the primary cause? In alkalosis, either bicarbonate will increase or PCO2 is decreased. So in this case PCO2 is decreased but bicarbonate is not increased, so it is a case of, answer the question, respiratory alkalosis. The elevated pH indicates alkalemia. The markedly reduced PCO2 suggests excessive CO2 elimination, that is in hyperventilation. So the conclusion is the blood gas profile is consistent with acute respiratory alkalosis, primarily driven by hyperventilation induced hypocapnia. See the second question. Interpret the following arterial blood gas values and determine the underlying acid-base disorders. And here is a diagram. This is called fishbone structure and the values are given here. 140 is sodium value, 3.6 is the potassium, 116 is the chloride and 14 is the bicarbonate level, and 13 is the BUN or blood urea nitrogen, 1 is the creatinine, and at the tail part 100 is the blood glucose level. So here pH is 7.32, so less than 7.35, that is acidosis. In acidosis, either PCO2 will be increased or bicarbonate will be decreased. So what will be the primary disorders? Metabolic acidosis. Now evaluate the respiratory compensation. So in case of metabolic acidosis, we apply the Winter's formula, 1.5 into bicarbonate plus 8 plus minus 2. So that is around 27 to 31. So actual pH here is given 28. So it is between the range, so appropriate compensation has occurred. In case of metabolic acidosis, we calculate the anion gap. Whether it is high anion gap or low anion gap, we have to determine this. So anion gap is calculated from sodium minus chloride minus bicarbonate equal to 10. That is between the normal range. The normal range is around 8, between the 8 and 12. So diagnosis is normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, and this suggests a loss of bicarbonate without an increase in unmeasured anions. Common cause include normal anion gap metabolic acidosis occurs in diarrhea, renal tubular acidosis, early renal failure, use of certain medications, that is example acetazolamide. Now see the third example. pH is 7.28, that is below 7.35, that is acidosis. In acidosis, either PCO2 will be increased or bicarbonate will be decreased. So here bicarbonate has decreased significantly, but PCO2 is not increased beyond 40. So here it is the case of metabolic acidosis like the previous one. And serum electrolyte profile is given here. 128 is the sodium, 3.8 is the potassium, 94 is the chloride level, and 12 is the bicarbonate, 20 is BUN or blood urea nitrogen, and 1.8 is the creatinine, and at the tail part 145 is the glucose level. So first of all, assess the pH 7.28, that is acidemia, and the primary disorder is metabolic acidosis. Compensation rule, we have applied the Winter's formula 24 to 28, and here it is given 24, so it is within the expected range, so appropriate compensation has occurred. Now calculate the anion gap. Anion gap is 22, that is more than the normal level, so it is high anion gap metabolic acidosis with appropriate respiratory compensation. Now see the fourth question. pH is 7.09, so it is acidosis. In acidosis, PCO2 will be increased or bicarbonate will be decreased. So PCO2 has not increased, but bicarbonate has decreased. So it is a case of metabolic acidosis. And serum albumin level is 2.5, that is also decreased from the normal level, that is 4.5. So 4.5 minus 2.5, that is 2. So 2 into 2.5 equal to 5. So we have to calculate the anion gap, and we have to add 5 more with the anion gap. See the answer. So determine the primary disorder. It is the metabolic acidosis, I have told previously, and we have applied the Winter's formula. So the range has become the 21 to 25. and the actual PCO2 is 34 millimeter, that is higher than expected, so indicates coexistent respiratory acidosis. And in anion gap is equal to 13, and for the albumin we have to correct the anion gap. So corrected anion gap is 18, that indicates high anion gap. So it is high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus coexistent respiratory acidosis. See another question. pH is 7.39, that is between the normal range. PCO2 is 22 and bicarbonate is 13. pH is 7.39, that is normal, but it is below 7.4, so it is towards the acidic range. And if it would be more than 7.4, this will be the towards the alkalotic or alkalosis range. If it is more than 7.4, so it is not within the normal range, but it is towards the acidotic side. Now interpret the acid base status. So here pH is normal, but other values are not normal. pH is 7.39, so within the range. Determine the primary disorders. Bicarbonate is less, so bicarbonate has decreased. PCO2 is also low, so despite normal pH, the low bicarbonate suggests metabolic acidosis. And in metabolic acidosis, we calculate the expected PCO2 level from Winter's formula, that is 28.5. so it is lower than the expected. So if it is lower than the expected, so respiratory alkalosis has also occurred. Now calculate the anion gap. Anion gap is 38 from the calculation, so it is high anion gap metabolic acidosis. And we have to calculate the delta ratio for high anion gap metabolic acidosis. So delta ratio equal to anion gap minus 12 by 24 minus bicarbonate level. So anion gap 38 minus 12 by 24 minus 13. So we have to calculate the delta ratio in case of high anion gap metabolic acidosis. So it is 2.36. A delta ratio more than 2 suggests coexisting metabolic alkalosis. So the final answer will be high anion gap metabolic acidosis with metabolic alkalosis. There are so many questions like this. I will not waste time with this calculation. So these are all the similar types of questions. You can see it from the PDF. I am skipping one by one. If you want, I can share the PDF with you. Now I have also included the theoretical discussion of individual disorders. You can read it from the books or from the PDF itself. DKA or alcoholic ketoacidosis, lactic acidosis, toxin-induced acidosis, ethylene glycol and methanol, pyroglutamic acidosis, CKD and uremic acidosis, acid-base disturbances in CKD. So you can read from the book. I have also mentioned these portions in the previous slides. Metabolic alkalosis causes or saline responsive versus unresponsive metabolic alkalosis. So these are the theoretical parts. I have also discussed this portion also. in the practical portion. Actually, I have included all the topics of these acid-base disorders one by one. See the ABG patterns in common ICU conditions. These are sepsis, decay, renal failure, salicylate toxicity, pregnancy, toluene sniffing or COPD. And acid-base in respiratory failure, that is COPD exacerbation. Acute or chronic respiratory acidosis can occur. Acid base in critical electrolyte disorders, these are one of the most important portions. In hypokalemia, metabolic alkalosis can be worsened, and in hyperkalemia it worsens the metabolic acidosis, and in hypocalcemia symptoms worsen in alkalosis, tetany, seizures, etc. Hypophosphatemia worsens respiratory muscle weakness in alkalosis. ABG in shock state, hypovolemic shock, in this case metabolic acidosis can occur. In cardiogenic shock, mixed disorder can occur, and in septic shock, early alkalosis or late acidosis can occur. This is the advanced concept, Stewart's approach. So strong ion difference equal to sodium plus potassium plus calcium plus magnesium minus chloride minus lactate. The normal SID or strong ion difference is 40 milli equivalent per liter. Now at a glance, see the compensation rules. In metabolic acidosis, we use the Winter's formula, and in metabolic alkalosis, we use this formula also. 0.7 into bicarbonate plus 21 plus minus 2, and this formula also. Respiratory acidosis we have also discussed previously, the compensation rules in acute and chronic, and also in respiratory alkalosis we have discussed about the 1425 formula. Remember, in respiratory acidosis and chronic compensation, in some books it is written 3.5 instead of 4. So remember this. Acid base impact on organ system, you can see this from the PDF or from the book. Acid base formulas at a glance: Henderson-Hasselbalch formula for the pH, anion gap formula, corrected anion gap for albumin, Winter's formula, delta ratio, osmolar gap, and strong ion difference or SID, or the Stewart's concept. Now see the golden rules for ABG. Always use stepwise approach. Never stop at first diagnosis. Check for mixed disorders. Compensation never overcorrects. If overshoot, mixed disorder can occur. Normal pH does not mean normal ABG. Remember this. Could be mixed disorder. So normal pH does not mean normal ABG. We have seen in example previously. Always consider clinical background. This may be due to decay, COPD, vomiting, sepsis or renal failure or other causes. Use urine electrolytes when needed, especially in metabolic alkalosis and RTA.